The suspension stands, the therapy sessions continue, and hide the booze, kids, because Mommy's home. There's so much to talk about from this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. Let's jump right in. This is About Last Night on Rumble Rewind. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rumble Rewind. My name is Brandon. Thanks for hanging out with me for a bit today on the channel. Before we jump in and talk about all the things that we're to talk about on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, do me a quick favor, scroll down below this video, hit that like button for me, and while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your post notifications. We are looking to grow this channel and reach our first goal of 200 subscribers. Once we get there, we're going to be giving away some CM Punk merch. We would love to get that in your hands before SummerSlam, so help us get there by subscribing to the channel, and go ahead and share this video with anybody that you know that loves talking about WWE, talking about Monday Night Raw. If you think they would enjoy this content, send them this direction so we can get to that goal quicker. All right, let's dive into this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. We're talking about the big three, the top three moments, the top three matches, stories, surprises that happened this week on this episode of Raw. First up, we've got to talk about the show opener, and that surrounds CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud, now featuring Seth freaking Rollins. Punk would come to the ring and he would begin a promo talking about John Cena's retirement and saying that he hopes he gets to lace him up with Cena one more time. And I gotta say, I agree with this. I hope we get to see Punk and Cena again. There have been some really, really incredible moments that have come out of their rivalry and their feuds in the past, and I would love to see them go one more time. Punk at that point turns his attention to Drew McIntyre and his ongoing feud with him. He said he's tempted to look under the ring to see if Drew is there, but Drew went and got himself suspended, so he's not super worried about it. Punk would state that he is trying to teach Drew a lesson, and that lesson is that actions have consequences. In his promo, he says that he wants Drew reinstated so that he can get his hands on him and continue teaching him that lesson. At this point, Seth Rollins would make his entrance and come to the ring. Punk would warn Seth that last time they were face to face, Punk said it would be the last time that Seth disrespected him. Seth would sarcastically say that he would never disrespect the best in the world, and the two would begin to have a conversation. Seth, in that conversation, asked Punk why actions have consequences only apply to everybody except for Punk himself. Punk would go on to apologize, saying that he's been a little snowblind with rage and singular focus, and he said that he's sorry that his goals got in the way of Seth's. At the end, though, he said he can't be too sorry, though, because it's still Seth. And so the two of them would continue to jog back and forth, with Seth finally saying that since Punk got in his way, he would get in Punk's way as well. He said as soon as Punk was cleared, Seth would be there to put him right back on the shelf so that he never gets the opportunity to get in the ring with Drew. Now, I thought that this was a really, really great work on both of these guys' part. This promo was awesome. It was an incredible opening segment because this isn't about good guys and bad guys. This isn't about faces versus heels. This is about two guys who are focused on their own story to the point that it caused them to cross each other's path in a really unfortunate way. Now, I mean, unfortunate for them, very fortunate for us as viewers and fans, because this thing went from hot to even hotter, and now adding Seth into the mix just makes it that much more interesting. But like I said in my Money in the Bank recap, the most fascinating thing about this Punk versus Drew feud is how hot it has been, despite the fact that these two have not been in the ring a single time. In what's now going on 6 months, we've been watching this feud play out since the Royal Rumble. These guys have not been in the ring together at all, and yet we're still calling it one of, if not the greatest feud currently active in professional wrestling. But now we're adding Seth into that, and honestly, Seth is a great addition. It's going to open up some more stories to be told between the three of them, and I'm looking forward to it. However, I am very curious as to where it's going to go from here and how they're going to book that. I really don't want to see a triple threat match at SummerSlam. I didn't want it when it was a possibility of throwing the world title into this mix and it being a triple threat with Gunther, Drew McIntyre, and CM Punk. Didn't want it then. Don't want it between Seth, Punk, and McIntyre. I want the first match between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre to be a one-on-one match on an epic stage, but now it kind of feels like CM Punk is going to have to go through Seth Rollins to get there. I also don't want to see that match burned on a Monday Night Raw. So again, I'm curious to see how it goes down. My quick thought, my first booking idea is that Seth will get involved in the SummerSlam match between the two and possibly cost Punk the match. We'll have to see, though. I really don't want to burn that feud at all. I feel like that is a WrestleMania-worthy feud between Punk and Rollins. And so maybe that's the story getting told. Maybe Punk gets through SummerSlam and even closer to Survivor Series focused on Drew, and then he's able to shift his focus and we get Seth versus Punk, and that could take us into WrestleMania. I gotta say though, I love the booking, the way that this works, because we're sitting here talking about almost a year's worth of content with just 2 stories, and that is the big win of this long-term booking. Now later in the night, we would see Punk in Pierce's office, with Pierce telling Punk that he would bring Drew in next week to have a conversation about possible reinstatement, but in order for that to happen, Punk has to stay home. He said he does not want a repeat of what happened at Money in the Bank, and if that happens, a match with Drew and any championship aspirations that Punk has are out the window. He said he really needs to have this conversation without Punk being there, and Punk finally agrees to comply. I guess we'll see. But seriously, I do think that Punk is going to stay home next week. So sorry if you're one of the Dayton, Ohio fans that's going to be at Monday Night Raw hoping to see CM Punk. Looks like he's not going to be there. So again, like I said, I'm not sure where and how all this booking is going to go, but I am guessing that Punk and Drew will be the focus in the near term, and then we'll move into a Seth versus Punk feud in the long term. And so again, long-term booking, this stuff is awesome. I love it. But tell me what you think. What do you think about this feud, and how do you see all 3 of these stories fitting together? All right, let's move on to what I think is the second kind of biggest story of the night, and that revolves around the Wyatt Six. The first match of the night featured Chad Gable facing Jey Uso, and in this match it went back and forth with both men getting in some of their signature offense, but eventually the lights would fade, signaling the arrival of the Wyatt Six. At this point, Chad Gable is obviously freaked out. He's distracted. Jey uses that opportunity to hit him with the spear and pick up the win. And as much as I'm sure Jey hated to do it in the aftermath, he had to yeet and run. After that, Chad Gable does come to. He gets up and recognizes what's going on as the lights continue to fade. Chad escapes from the ring, continues to back down the aisle when a fan yells, "Chad, they're behind you," causing Chad to trip backwards, kind of roll out, get back up, and continue to walk. It was really funny. It was well done. Really great response from Chad in the moment. Just really, really good storytelling there. It was actually really funny. You should check that clip out. It was amazing. But after that, Nikki Cross would, in similar fashion to weeks before, deliver a tattered old box to the commentary team that contained a VHS tape. Later in the evening, we would see the contents of that tape, and on this one, we would see Bo Dallas once again answering questions asked to him by Uncle Howdy. These questions were mainly focused on Bo's family and the new family that he sort of assembled around him. Now, throughout the video, we would see the faces of Joe Gacy, Eric Rowan, and Dexter Lumis, both masked and unmasked, and the video would kind of wind down with Dallas asking Uncle Howdy, "Do you think we're sick?" Howdy would respond by saying, "Yes, I do," and then Dallas would say, "Then sick we will be." Now, conspicuous by her absence was Nikki Cross from this video. She was in it, but only masked, so there's a lot of questions as to why she is the only member of the group that didn't appear without her mask on. I don't know, maybe that's going to be part of the story going forward. We'll have to see. Give me your theories in the comments. But immediately after this video played, we would cut to a backstage segment with Chad Gable complaining to Adam Pearce that he has yet to do anything about the Wyatt Six. Gable said at this point that he would handle it, but after he handles it, he expects a sincere apology from everybody in the locker room, and maybe even a vacation after the month that he's had. He would storm off, and Pearce would open his office door, and there we would see Bo Dallas sitting in a chair waiting for Adam Pearce. Pearce walked into the office and closed the door, and that was the end of their story for the evening. I am so hoping that we get to see a little preview, a little sneak peek of what happened in that office, maybe via social media or something like that. But I do assume that we're waiting until next week's episode of Raw to get any information concerning that. Adam Pearce is pretty active on social media, so maybe we'll get an Instagram post or something like that. But I'm loving this story so far. I'm loving the way that it's developing. One of the big questions, though, around the whole thing has been, what's going to happen when the bell rings? And how do we move this story from these videos into actual segments with these guys at wrestling events, in wrestling matches? What is that going to look like? And it does look like this is the beginning of that transition. It looks like this is the way that they're going to begin to move towards being in-ring competitors and allow that story to play out that way. My guess is this is leading up to some sort of match for somebody, some part of the group at SummerSlam. My first guess is obviously that it's going to be Bo Dallas, but we will have to see. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, where it's going to go, but I am hoping that we'll soon begin to see Bo Dallas and members of the Wyatt Six in actual live segments as opposed to mostly these videos. That's going to be where the answers to a lot of these questions come, and mostly the questions of, is this going to work in the current day WWE? I'm excited to find out. Tell me your thoughts on this story so far. How do you feel about the developments as it stands, and what are you most looking forward to as we continue to move forward in the Wyatt Six saga? All right, before we talk about the highlight of the night for me, let's hit real quick a few other details, quick moments, noteworthy things that happened. We would see a backstage segment with Sheamus that got interrupted by Bronson Reed, who said that he is the future and Sheamus is the past. He said he would face Sheamus anytime, any place, just not tonight, because tonight Sheamus would get an opportunity to see what he does to his mate, Pete Dunne. Now, in that match, Bronson Reed would win with a tsunami, and post-match would continue to beat down Pete Dunne. He would go for a second tsunami, but Sheamus would interrupt, clear the ring of Bronson Reed, and make the save. The real story here, though, is after that, Sheamus attempted to celebrate with Pete Dunne, and Dunne pushed him off, shrugged him off, and bailed from the ring. Now, this is because Dunne has felt and has stated in the past that Sheamus abandoned the Brawling Brutes and abandoned Pete Dunne. So we're seeing a little bit of that tension play out, which makes a lot of sense. So really curious about that story. Looking forward to seeing it develop. We would also see later in the evening a backstage segment with Seth Rollins talking to Damian Priest. Both men sold respect for one another because they both kept their word. Seth said despite all of the craziness, the referee mistake, the cash-in and all of that, he would keep his word as well and would not challenge Damian Priest for the championship again so long as he had it. Priest said that he appreciates that, and as much as he respects Seth standing behind his word, Priest would remove the gentleman's agreement and would be happy to face Seth Rollins again once he got through Gunther. Now, of course, this does take away some of the weight of the stipulation, but it does paint Damian Priest to be a fighting champion, which is the story that is the primary focus of all of this right now. So it makes a lot of sense that Priest would withdraw that stipulation and offer Seth another shot. I do think the point's going to be moot because I'm pretty sure Gunther is walking out of SummerSlam with the World Heavyweight Championship. Moving on, Sami Zayn would come to the ring a little later to cut a promo. Of course, he would cut the underdog promo, but he would say in this underdog promo that he's no longer an underdog because now he's a champion and he deserves some respect. Sure thing, Sami, but we'll see if you're still saying that next time you need to cut an underdog promo. Braun Breaker would, of course, interrupt this promo, and he would begin kind of selling respect for Sami, congratulating him for being one of the only people, or the only person on the main roster who's been able to beat him. This respect would be short-lived, though, as Breaker would spear Sami Zayn twice. In the midst of the promo, he would just cut himself short, spear Sami Zayn, and begin to beat him down. Eventually, security, of course, would pull him off. Dragunov would run to the ring to check on Sami Zayn, and later in the night, Dragunov would demand a match with Braun Breaker. We'd see that match take place, and it would end in a disqualification when Braun Breaker threw an office chair at Dragunov's head. Following this, Sami Zayn came down to the ring with his ribs taped up to make the save, but Braun would beat him down and toss him over the commentary booth. Dragunov would try to make the save, fighting off Braun Breaker again, but again, Breaker would get the better of him and throw Dragunov across the commentary booth, and the commentary team at this point would sell that Breaker is dangerous and unpredictable. I love seeing this. It's a really good idea. The good thing that they did, it got Braun Breaker some of his heat back after the clean loss at Money in the Bank. I still don't think that that was the right decision. I still want this belt off of Sami as quickly as possible. I still want somebody else holding that championship. I am so bored of Sami Zayn. I'm so bored of the underdog story and how he tells it over and over again. I'm glad to see that Braun Breaker got his heat back, and I'm assuming we're going to get a rematch at SummerSlam, and I'd be willing to bet that the outcome goes the other direction. Because I got to tell you, if we run this thing back and Sami walks out with that championship, I am going to lose it. Seriously, it is time to move on from Sami Zayn. We need to move on. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the Judgment Day. We would see a 6-man tag match with Finn Balor, JD McDonough, and Carlito defeating The Miz, R-Truth, and Braun Strowman. This happened after Truth was distracted, allowing Finn Balor to hit him with the shotgun dropkick and a coup de grace for the win. Now, the real story, though, is after the match, the look on the face of The Miz. He is so angry and so sad that Truth keeps dropping the ball. I think we might be seeing another heel turn from The Miz really soon. Later in the night, Damage Control would face off against Lyra Valkyria, Kaden Carter, and Katana Chance in a 6-woman tag match Before the match, we got a video of Damage Control saying that they have lost control, but tonight they will take it back. Damage Control would win this match clean as Sky hit Kaden Carter with the over the moonsault for the win. Now, after the match, Damage Control was attacked by Sonya Deville, Shayna Baszler, and Zoe Stark. Later in the evening, Jackie Redmond would interview this newly formed group, who said the women's division was theirs now. This would bring Alba Fire and Isla Dawn into the scene to interrupt, and they said as long as they had the titles, that the division belonged to them. Sonya said that that would not be the case for long. Now, it's also worth mentioning that during this segment, in the background, you can see that Chad Gable is talking to the Creed brothers and Ivy Nile. Now, this has kind of been a background story for a while, and is obviously Chad trying to recruit some help to take on the Wyatts since Alpha Academy is dissolved. But this kind of story, this bit of the story is a little bit diluted or watered down for me because it's just been taking place in these background segments and these background moments. I feel like there was so much potential in the breakup of Alpha Academy story, and it's kind of become background noise in the overarching story of Chad Gable and the Wyatt Six. I do think that Gable was a good first target. I do think that that story is working really well. I just wish that the other side of it could be developed a little bit more. Before we talk about, for me, what was the highlight of the night, I just gotta say, I've been trying to keep this section of other notable moments pretty brief, just hit the quick highlights. But with the way that the WWE is being booked right now, that is very, very difficult. But I mean difficult in the best way possible. Rarely are the stories that are being told on a Monday Night Raw isolated to just the people involved. They seem to all interlock and all interconnect in some way, and that's why I'm talking about Gable's actual side of the story with the Wyatts being so watered down, because they're so interconnected and so interlocked that you can't really talk about one without the other, and you can't give one time without the other. And this adds so much interest to each story because all of these little stories are part of something bigger. This has been a really big selling point for me for Monday Night Raw over the last few weeks and months. I'm really enjoying the way that this show is being booked and the way that these stories are being told. All right, let's talk about the highlight of the night, and it surrounds Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio. It was announced last week that we would get a mixed tag match on tonight's episode with Liv and Dominic facing off against Zelina Vega and Rey Mysterio. That match would be our main event, but earlier in the night, we'd seen Mysterio complaining to Pierce that he didn't want the match. He did not want to tag with Liv. Pierce said the match was official and it was happening. Morgan showed up at the end of that and convinced Dom that they needed to go talk strategy and talk about some double team moves. Dominic reluctantly agrees and says there better be some tendies or nuggies involved in this conversation. So give this man his tendies. Later, we would see what this strategy session actually looked like, with Liv convincing Dom to let her help him stretch. The Judgment Day would walk in to find Dom in a compromising position, and then Liv would leave. Dom would tell the rest of the Judgment Day that he thought he had it handled. Obviously he doesn't, and he is going to handle it tonight. Now, like I said, that match would be our main event of the evening, and the heels would pick up the victory with Dom pinning his dad for the very first time. After the match, Liv hugged Dom. He pushed her off, but then she went in for a second attempt. This time, she pulled him to the ground. Dominic looked like he was finally going to fold as he leaned in, but that is when we heard Rhea Ripley's music hit. That's right, kids, hide your booze. Mami's back. Rhea came to the ring and Liv bailed quickly. Rhea got in Dom's face. He tried to give her a hug, celebrate that she was there, but she shrugged him off, left the ring, and he followed her to the back like a lost puppy, with her ignoring him the entire time. So hey, it is really good to see Rhea Ripley back, and it looks like we are going to get Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan at SummerSlam. I'm really curious to see, though, where does Dominic Mysterio land in all of this? I'm as close to 100% certain as I can be that this is the end of Judgment Day as we know it. Right now, I think that Priest and Rhea are obviously going to be on one side of this. Finn Balor, JD McDonough, Carlito, and Liv are going to be on the other side. The real question for me, like I said, though, is where does Dominic Mysterio land? The way I see it, he's either been Team Rhea this whole time, and he's been playing Liv, and he'll end up on that side, or what we've seen is more legit, and Liv has been trying to do the same thing to Dom that Rhea did to him to get him in the Judgment Day in the first place. With the way that things currently stand, I'm kind of guessing that Dom ends up with Rhea and Priest, because that would help keep the numbers sort of even, and that matters for booking down the road. But Dominic Mysterio as a face doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't really interest me, and I don't think it serves the purpose of the Liv Morgan revenge tour as well as him ditching Rhea would. Tell me your thoughts though in the comments below. How does the story shake out as we head into SummerSlam? Where do you see Dominic Mysterio landing in all of this? All right, overall for me, this show was really, really solid. It has been a bit weird as I watched the show because as I watch, I don't feel like there's a lot of excitement. I don't feel like there's a lot of big moments that cause me to kind of get to the edge of my seat or jump. But when it all comes together and I look at the show as a whole, they've been really, really solid and really, really good. So with this one, I'm going to give it an 8.25 out of 10. The matches were all good. They were not great, but most of the developing stories around those matches and around the rest of the WWE universe, if you will, has been really, really solid. So like I said, 8.25 out of 10, and I imagine that Raw will probably win the week one more time because NXT and SmackDown just don't have those long-term stories in place that Raw does. SmackDown obviously has the Bloodline, which is heating up really well since Money in the Bank, since the week before. It's got that going for it. NXT does have some really good stories that have some potential, but they're all sort of just starting. You know, they've got things like Wesley's future being in question. They've got Trick Williams, and where does he go now that he lost the belt? They got Roxanne Perez and the epic women's championship run that she's on. Who's going to step up to her? Who is going to be on her level? All of those things have some great potential. And so as a side note, if you're not watching NXT, you really should be. It's really, really entertaining, really, really good. And if you need more reasons than that, check out this video here. I'll tell you all about Heatwave and how it was one of the best PLEs that we've seen this year. But that said, I do think that Raw will probably get the win this week in Brand Wars, as SmackDown and NXT really have more developing stories, while Raw has more that are burning a little bit hotter. Tell me your thoughts though. How would you rate this episode of Raw, and what was the highlight for you? Well, hey, that is it for this one. Thanks for hanging out with me for a bit on Rumble Rewind. Don't forget, before you go, scroll down below this video, hit that like button for me, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload, and you can stay up to date on all the information regarding the best giveaway in the world. Like I said, once we reach that first goal of 200 subscribers, we are giving away some CM Punk gear from WWE.com. Want you to be eligible for that, and the only way to be eligible is to hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, help us get to that goal. Share this video with somebody that you think would enjoy this content and get them over here as part of the community. If you missed Money in the Bank and you want to see what all the fuss was about, or if you just want to see how far off all of my predictions were, make sure you check out this video right here. Thanks again for hanging out with me for a bit today on Rumble Rewind. We'll see you on the next one.